The movie starts with a 15-year-old girl named Elizabeth, who's packing her things before going to work. She hugs her younger sister Lil and tells her older sister Dawn to call the police if she's not home before 9 p.m. 6 months earlier, Elizabeth Thomas was going to school for the first time. She'd been homeschooled much of her life. Their abusive mother was separated from them, and now she's living with his father and other siblings. Being her first time at school, Elizabeth finds it so hard to fit in with the other students. She has an older sister, but she is responsible enough to make her in charge of everything when his father is at work. The next day at school, she met their teacher in health science, Mr. Cummins. After class, his teacher, Mr. Cummins, saw her eating in the hallway, and then they went to the school cafeteria and pointed her to a group of kids that he thought she wouldn't be intimidated by, where she met Tim, Brandy, and Rachel, who are in the same class as Mr. Cummins. Later, after school, Mr. Cummins saw her left by the bus and offered her a lift home. On the way, he saw a cut in Beth's hand and applied first aid. She immediately felt comfortable talking to Mr. Cummins, whom she now calls by his first name, Tad. The next day at school, Tim asked her to eat with them in Ted's classroom. Ted started to show extra attention to Beth. He exchanged food with her when Beth's father forgot to use the gluten-free bread, which she is allergic to. Later at home, Beth started to look into Ted's Instagram. Meanwhile, Ted is talking to his wife about his student named Beth and her family's situation, and he suggested inviting Beth to their church on Sunday, which her wife agreed to. The next day at school, Ted asked Beth to stay behind, and then he invited Beth to their church on Sunday. Beth agrees, and Ted tells her to wear something nice but not jeans. Beth wears a dress to church with Ted and her wife, Connie. The next day, Beth goes home and sees her sister Lily have bruises on her face. Her sister got into a fight for saying something about their mother and calling them white trash. At school, Beth starts talking to Ted about what happened to her sister. Ted was impressed by her maturity and how she handled the situation, and then he started flirting with Beth, saying how she must look really good naked. Then the bell rang, which ended their conversations. After school, she asks Rachel if Ted got really personal with her. But Rachel said that Ted probably feels bad for her family situation and for not having any friends at school. The next day, Beth is troubled by Ted's comment about her being naked, causing her to drop her book, interrupting the class. The other day, Tim asked her again to eat in Ted's room, and there Ted was entertaining them by talking about his job when he was in Special Forces. When the bell rings, Ted tells Beth to stay behind. He apologized to her for what he said the other day. Beth says it's okay and promises not to tell anyone. Ted says he got carried away because he couldn't stop thinking about how mature and beautiful she is, and then he held her hands and kissed her. Beth asks her father if she can take a job. His father told her that she should focus on school. However, he allowed Beth to work when she said a lot of students have after-school jobs. At lunch, Ted overhears Beth talking to Tim about looking for a job, so he says he will talk to his friend's daughter, who manages a restaurant. Later, she is interviewed by the manager, whom Tim calls for a favor, and said she could start tomorrow. The next day, Tad congratulates her for getting the job and tells her to come by his classroom at lunch. Later, Tad gives her a gold heart pendant, then he leads Beth into a closet where there is a bed and closes the door. After work, Beth sees his brother Ben, who brings food for them for dinner. When Ben learns that she started an after-school job, he discourages her from continuing because he wants her to enjoy the high school life experience he never had. At lunch the following day, Tad and Beth are inside the closet. She shares what his brother told him about high school life, where his brother thinks she has many friends. Tad tells her to be patient since he also did not have many friends when he was her age. When the bell rings, they exit the closet, and Tad fixes his clothes. Then, Tad saved his number on Beth's phone under the name Crystal, while in his phone her number is saved under the name Frank. She asks why they must be secretive, and he explains that people will keep them apart if they find out. He manipulated her into thinking that being together was what she wanted, then kissed her. But a student sees them behind the door. The next day, Detective McClendon speaks to Beth and asks if there's anyone she can call to join her during the conversations. At the police station, his brother Ben joins her as the detective informs them about a student who reported her kissing a teacher in the classroom. When Ben asks who the teacher is, Tad passes by being escorted by the police. Beth tells the detective that Tad sometimes gives her snacks and is always nice to her, then adds that he listens to her problems and feels like the only person she can talk to. Later, when Tad is being questioned by the detectives, he firmly denies all the accusations. He admits giving Beth more attention because of her family situation. Eventually, Detective McClendon forbade him to approach and speak to Beth during the active investigations. When Beth got home, she texted Tad about the police, but she promised she never told them any incriminating details. He responds that he needs to see her. She replied that they could meet in the restaurant parking lot before her shift. In his car, Beth is worried about what will happen to him. He assures her that nothing will happen, but they need to avoid each other in school. The next day, Rachel confronts Beth for ruining the reputation of their teacher. After school, she leaves in Tad's car and drives away to another location. Beth expresses his anguish towards other students staring at her and calling her a slut. He tells her to stay strong and not let other people tear them apart. The following morning, the police prevented him from entering the school and informed him that the security camera saw them and asked if he drove her home. Later, Beth received a text message from Tad suggesting they run away together. At work, she received a text from Tad asking to meet her outside the store. Later, during her break, Tad told her that they needed to drive for a few days to reach the coast. However, she is hesitant to leave her family, so Tad reminded her that it was her fault he got suspended because she got in his car the other day. Then Tad said he loved her and threatened to end his life if she didn't come with him. That night, Tad texted her that they were leaving tomorrow. Beth says he can't leave her family, so Tad threatens to hurt her family if she doesn't come with him. Meanwhile, her wife, Connie, gives her a silent treatment at dinner because of the rumors she's been hearing around town. Moments later, he asks if they can swap vehicles because he is worried his car can't make it to his job interview and back. Connie drops the key on the table without saying anything. In the morning, Beth tells Dawn to call the police if she isn't home by 9 p.m. At the restaurant, Tad texted her that he was in Connie's vehicle outside. When Beth was about to say she was not coming, she saw a handgun on the seat. Tad tells her to trust him, so she got in the car, and they drove off. That night, Dawn tells his father what her sister said in the morning. Later, outside the restaurant, Ed is talking to the police, and the manager tells the police that after Beth took her break, she never returned. In the station, Connie hands the police the note her husband left and says he emptied their savings account. Moments later, Agent Hammer from the FBI arrived to speak to the detectives. He summarizes what they know, with the note left by Tad implying they are heading to Virginia or D.C. and they haven't been able to track their cell phones. Days later, Tad instructs Beth to remove a plate number from another car, which they will use to avoid detection. That night, they checked into a motel. In the room, Beth put on the glasses she bought, and Tad shaved off, then he asked Beth to go to bed. In the police station, Agent Hammer received security camera evidence of Tad in a gas station in Oklahoma. This means the two are heading west. Days later, in a different motel, they watch the news of Connie's plea for Tad. When Beth expresses that her family might already be worried about her, Tad says they can't contact anyone because they will both go to jail and reminds her that when she swapped the license plate, she committed a federal offense. Then Tad said they needed to flee the country. Since they couldn't board a plane, they would use a boat to get to Mexico. The next day, Tad and Beth went to the beach, and as they carried the kayak he purchased, a beach patrol forbade them from getting into the rough water. Beth said they can try again tomorrow, but Tad says they can't because the man already saw them and probably will see their faces in the news tonight. Later, they drive to a campground, where they meet Myron Allen. Tad tells him they are going to Brokenhead Ranch. He said he lost his wallet and had to cancel the credit card, so he asked the man for free gas so they could reach their destination. Myron advised them against driving at night and suggested they sleep in the campground and leave in the morning. Then he hands some money to Tad. That night, Tad wondered if Myron recognized them and considered shooting him, but Beth said he was just worrying over nothing. At the Brokenhead Ranch, the man welcomes them to stay as long as they contribute. A week and a half later, the community leader confronts Tad about their failure to contribute and only eats their food. Then a woman warns her that abuse doesn't just mean physical assault. Seconds later, Tad told her they'd be leaving Brokenhead Ranch. Soon they get back to the campground and ask Myron if they can stay there for a few days. Myron tells them that there is a small cabin they can use. When Beth saw the cabin, she complained about the place being gross. Ted said this will do until he figures out their next step. Then he pulls her close to do the deed, but she refuses because she just wants to go to sleep. The next day, the FBI corners him when he walks out of the cabin, then they instruct Beth to exit the cabin and handcuff her. Soon she comes home and is overwhelmed by the reporters outside their house. Inside, the family welcomes her with a warm group hug. Weeks later, Ben gives his sister a book that may help her and suggests she talk to a therapist. During the therapy session, Beth admits that she misses talking to Tad. The woman said it was an effect of grooming and explained to Beth that the teacher made her feel like he was the only person who cared about her and manipulated her to think he only wanted what was best for her. Several months later, Beth now lives with her brother Ben and works in a donut shop. Later, her coworker mentions how difficult it must be for her to go through life with people constantly judging her. Then she says there is an online message board for their high school that continues discussing the case. After work, Beth visits the website and reads awful comments from people saying she destroyed an innocent teacher's life. Suddenly, Ben called her and informed her that Tad was pleading guilty. The next day, they meet the case-leading prosecutor, who tells Beth that a victim impact statement could help increase the teacher's sentence. At the donut shop, while Beth works in the drive-thru, Rachel and her date drive up to the window, and she insults Beth for destroying the life of Tad. Fed up, she throws a beverage into the vehicle. At the house, Ben tells his sister that maybe giving a victim impact statement might get her side of the story in front of the public and grant her the opportunity to say everything she wants to Tad. During the trial, Beth is called to the stand. But the trauma of seeing Tad makes it difficult for her to read her statement, so the prosecutor offers to read it on her behalf. However, she finally got the courage to speak from the heart about how Tad manipulated her, and now he no longer holds the power over her. Beth told the judge that Tad deserves 38 years in prison, 1 year for each day he kept her away from her family. Tad can do nothing but hide his face behind his hands. On January 16, 2019, Tad Cummins was sentenced to 20 years in prison. In June of the same year, Elizabeth got married and started a new chapter in her life. Thank you for watching movie quotes and recaps. And for more videos, please hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell.